I recently got my hands on a Casio CZ1 phase distortion synthesizer from 1986. It's full of a lot of really cool sounds, so I sampled it and built the Casio CZ1 Ableton Live Pack. And this pack contains all 64 presets that I multi-sampled at different velocities, so you get different timbres with every keystroke. And there's also 16 macro controls with 8 macro presets. So you kind of really get like 512 sounds with this instrument. Right now the music is made entirely with this pack, including the drums. Phase distortion was a type of synthesis made by Casio that's kind of the answer to frequency modulation, which was popular in the 80s. It has a lot of those similar metallic sounds, but there's something else that's kind of special about the phase distortion sound that's unique. While programming these sounds in Ableton Live, I also used the sampler's frequency modulation feature, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. And with the effects and all the parameters you can control with the macros, these instruments are more fun than the actual synthesizer. They're easier to control, there's a more diverse sound range, and they're all available at your fingertips. The Casio CZ1 Pack is available at my site, brianfunk.com/Casio. And if you're a member of the Music Production Club, you will get this included with your membership this month. The Music Production Club gets you my latest releases as soon as they're released at a fraction of the normal cost, as well as a whole bunch of other Ableton Live packs, tutorials, video courses, and access to our community where like-minded producers like you are sharing each other's work, supporting each other, and helping each other make music. It's a lot of fun. We got some cool challenges going on right now, as well as a fall 2020 compilation, which you can be part of. That's the Music Production Club at brianfunk.com/MPC. And I want to thank my buddy Dave for thinking of me when he saw the Casio CZ1 at a local garage sale. Thanks, Dave. And a quick note about today's show. My guests were the supervising sound editor and sound designer for the biopic Weird, the Al Yankovic story. Before speaking to them, I didn't know the film was available to stream for free on Roku. I was able to do that afterwards, and it was hysterical. It was great. And it was a lot of fun to hear all of the work they did after speaking with them. So definitely check out Weird, the Al Yankovic story on Roku. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. This is a show about all things making music. And today I have Mike James Gallagher and Anthony Vanchure, and they are sound designers, sound editors, supervisors, sound editors as well. We'll get to the specifics of that, but they've worked on some really cool projects. They have an Emmy nomination for Lucy and Desi. They did the Weird, the Al Yankovic story, which looks awesome, by the way. I love Weird Al, and I'm excited to see that. A lot of really cool work. They're doing plenty of. They did Song Exploder on Netflix, which is I know I've spoken about this on the podcast, but Song Exploder is a great podcast as well, and the Netflix series is incredible, and they worked on that. So they got a lot of cool stuff under their belts, and I'm really happy and honored to have them both on the show. Mike, Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for having us, Brian.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys. It's a really cool project, the Weird Al one, the Al Yankovic story. It's funny because I got on this Weird Al wormhole recently, and I was like just so blown away about how good of a musician he is.
Incredible. Yeah. There's a scene in the movie where young Al plays, I think it's called the clarinet polka, and it's the fastest sounding, and you're just like amazed. And they're like, oh, the director, Eric Appel, was just like, oh, Al just busted that one out in a second. And just like, you're just blown away at how amazingly talented he is, you know? It's great. Yeah,
it's pretty cool. And that's always like there's like this very interesting, I've discovered this like Weird Al core, cult fan base that, because, he's known as a parody artist. And I think sometimes you might assume that means maybe he's just a joke, but they are like really serious about Weird Al and his abilities. And you can really see why when you really start looking into his work.
Oh, he's great. I mean, he's got not just the parodies, but he has all the original songs that he's done too. He just got done doing a 6-month-long tour where he was only playing his original songs. And yeah, his fan base, they love him. Mike and I were at the premiere at TIFF for the movie, and the amount of fans that were there just dressed as Al. People had Al puppets that they like handmade Weird Al puppets that they brought. His fans are great, super nice. It was cool meeting a bunch of them, and yeah, he's definitely a top-notch dude for sure. It was great to get to work with him. So.
I was just telling Anthony that I don't think we're going to go to a screening that has that kind of energy for a while.
Yeah.
The crowd energy was insane for the premiere.
Yeah, people like clapping along, just singing along to his songs. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we had a blast.
Yeah,
that is so cool.
Yeah,
I thought maybe a good place to start, not just for the audience, but for my own education too, is if you guys could talk a little bit about the work you actually do, in these roles for these films and other stuff you've worked on.
Yeah, so I'm a supervising sound editor. And Mike is as well, and our roles are, we help tell these stories through audio, through sound. We get to, I'll read a script, meet with the directors, talk about how they want these movies to sound, and then it's up to us as sound artists to develop these sounds and make these movies sound the way the directors want them to sound, and it's a lot of fun. It's some of the stuff we get to do. It's sometimes you go, what are these? These are the sounds we're making for this movie. This is great. It's a lot of. There's a lot of crossover between music production and sound effects production. Weirdly enough, so.
And on Weird specifically, Anthony was the supervising sound editor, and my title is sound designer. This is Mike, by the way. And there's a lot of crossover between what a supervising sound editor does and what a sound designer would do on a movie. In this particular case, Anthony was responsible for a lot of the dialogue, all the loop group, ADR, all that stuff, but also transferring a lot of the direction from the director to me, the sound designer, to kind of like bring all these cinematic scenes to life that were in Weird Al.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, ideally, I would be kind of responsible for like everything you hear except for the music. But like I said, in this case, Anthony was responsible for the dialogue and everything. But even in certain situations, and actually in this movie, I am involved a lot with the music. And I did have the music for the last week of editing. So I was able to integrate a lot of my sound effects into the music track. So...
Yeah, it's a very collaborative process. So like I said, I met with the director, read the script, and went over ideas, and then that's when Mike and I start working together, and we go, okay, let's do this, or let's do this. Let's try these sounds, or these are what the sounds that we're looking for from these scenes. This is what specifically the director gave a note that he's like, oh, I want these crowds to sound like they're from A Star Is Born. He had mentioned that in our initial meeting. So so I watched a lot of A Star Is Born just to go, okay, what were they going for there? And we tried to recreate those sounds to the director's liking as best we can. So yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this film seems almost like a parody of itself at the same time. There's kind of like a lot of layers of this going on, because I only have access to the trailer right now. And I'm like looking at some of the scenes, particularly one with Madonna, and I'm like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
this sounds like it's almost like a Weird Al version of his own story.
Yeah, it's 100%. That's exactly what it is. It is a parody of biopic movies. It's in the most Weird Al way possible. And so yes, there. Go watch it. It's on the Roku. Go to Roku.com, the Roku channel. Anybody can watch it now. It's out officially. Yes. So you have
for free.
For free. It's absolutely free. You don't have to sign up for anything. Yes, it's very much a parody. So those were a lot of the notes, when we were talking with the director early on. It's like, okay, these are the scenes. There's a great scene there's a pool party scene where it's like an homage / parodying the Boogie Nights, the big pool party scene at Boogie Nights. And so, while Mike and I are cutting sounds to go like, okay, we need it to sound like it's at this pool party scene, we're watching the Boogie Nights scene to go, oh, what were they going for there? And so, yes, it's a parody in the best way possible, and it just goes off the rails and gets crazier and crazier, and was a lot of fun to work on.
Fun fact, the music that they temped in for that scene during the offline edit was actually the song from Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they were definitely going for that. I also thought it was pretty entertaining that they, he kept, Eric Appel, the director, kept mentioning the Notorious B.I.G. biopic as like one of the biggest catalysts for like making this movie. The other funny reference that they used was Forrest Gump. So, yeah, it was kind of a mix of these like, biopic movies that they were parodying, all the different tropes.
Right. And then how does that play into your role? How do you tell that story where it's on one hand, it's meant to look kind of serious, but you also have to communicate that there's a joke happening here too.
That was actually, I think, one of the more fun things about the movie was that Mike and I have talked about this, where you think in your head, oh, we're going to go with cartoony sound effects. We're going to play some of these like sounds as a joke to help emphasize the joke. But very early on in the process, I mean, very from the get-go, Eric, our director, was like, we want to play this all straight. Like everything is played deadly serious. And so that helps inform what Mike and I are doing on, the sound wise. It's like, okay, so let's not go over the top. Like there's a great example. There's Al at one point throws a phone and it smashes against a wall. And I always wanted to cut in like a cat screaming sound effect, but that's like, yeah, like like that's a joke sound effect that you would cut. And while it got a laugh, it's like, oh, well, that's not the movie or that's not exactly the tone we're going for. And so we lost the cat screaming.
Immediately, Eric was like, take that out.
Yeah, take it out. And so it's like, well, it's fine. Cause you're like, well, this is, and that's part of the process, I always like to say like, oh, just cut as much as we can, and if we have to lose stuff on the stage, on the mix stage, it's it's all good. It's all it's all in purpose of telling the story, So
yeah, and he was talking about how like the situations are absurd enough that kind of takes care of the joke, and all we're doing with sound is really just supporting that reality. And a lot of the times within the scenes, it almost feels like an earnest, heartfelt film. I mean, it is. It honestly is.
Yeah.
And but then it's just surrounded by these extremely absurd situations. And from our perspective, it was just so much fun to just go, I don't know, as hard as we could. I mean, there's fight scenes in the movie, there's guns in the movie. And, one of my references was I was watching Heat and Collateral by the director Michael Mann, who has just these massive gunshots in his movie. And I was just like, we're just going to go hard on this, and just make these guns, they're not stylized. They're just brutal. And I think that makes it funnier.
Yeah. How do you go about that? Because I'm sure this isn't just an example of like, you're not just like picking a sample and putting it in there. How do you go about making something like that? Like a gunshot more dramatic, or any particular approaches or techniques?
Well, a lot of sound design is collecting sounds, either recording them or going through, the massive library that I have. And you're just looking for like there's just such, if you have 10 recordists and they're all 10 people recording sound effects and they're all assigned to record guns or gunshots, you're going to get 10 different recordings, and the different styles of recording. And some of them are going to be, a little lighter. Some of them are going to be like really in your face. So for this particular thing, I mean, watching Heat and Collateral, you're just like, man, these gunshots sound like the biggest things I've ever heard in my life. And that's what I'm going to hunt for, and then you use some techniques too, to, throwing like I always throw like a Lindrum kick drum behind a gunshot, especially one that's like a hero gunshot that's in your face. That really brings it to life. But yeah, just for what I was looking for, it was like brutal in your face gunshots, like where it sounds like it's hurting your ears. Whereas if you watch a movie like John Wick, it's very stylized and almost pleasant sounding gunshots, like cool, pleasant sounding gunshots. Whereas you watch a Michael Mann movie, it's much more raw and brutal.
You know, it's funny you bring that up because I was watching Night of the Living Dead recently. And I was really appreciating the gunshot sounds in there, the old style, like, pew, you know, like the ricochet.
Oh, yeah.
Ricochets. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. It's a blessing to have so many people recording great sounds. There's so many great sound effects libraries out there that you can find. And then sometimes it's a curse because you're just hunting for that right sound, and you just do, you know, sometimes you go, oh, I'll go record it myself. It's great. All the sounds that we have access to. So.
Yeah, recording guns is expensive, so it's best to not do that if you don't have to, you know?
Well, that's not unlike the problem I have every time I make music is I have 9,000 kick drum samples.
Yeah, exactly.
I used to have, when I was younger, I had my 4-track Tascam, and if my buddy left his drum kit over the house, that's what I had, and play it, move on.
And you just had a microphone, a cruddy microphone probably that wasn't
whatever
the best.
I had, wherever I could stick it, you know. If I had a stand, great. But it really sped up my process because now I waste a lot of time just scrolling. No, that one maybe.
Oh, it's endless. I feel like sometimes I'm like, I look at the clock, I'm like, I have to stop just looking for one sound because it's just like you could spend so much time just trying to find that right sound. And, you know, sometimes we have budgets and time, you know, time constraints on some of these movies. You know, you wish you could have, you know, Mike and I always joke around. We wish we could have months and months and months and months of editing, but, you know, sometimes it's just not the case. So you have to, you know, make sure you're getting the right sound when, you know.
It's an interesting idea that I hear a lot in music about narrowing your choices so that you can work faster and not have to, like, you know, like we're saying, dig through so much stuff, looking for the perfect thing, and sometimes it doesn't even matter. It's an interesting idea just because I don't think I've ever really done that when it comes to sound effects. I mean, I guess I have my go-to library sometimes. I mean, I guess I know my library pretty well, but I don't know. I really do enjoy the variety. If I'm searching for a gun, I'll search for gunshot, you know, and then subtract certain kinds of results that I'm getting because I don't want to get shells ejecting or anything like that. But yeah, I really there's a button in SoundMiner which we use to search for sound effects called randomize. And you'll search for gunshots and you'll narrow it down and you'll just hit randomize. And you just start randomly going through stuff. Like you're literally just it's like a scavenger hunt. Yeah. And I do think a lot of the variety creates surprises that maybe you would have never used or thought of or anything like that. So it's interesting. I think it actually works to our advantage not narrowing down our choices. But yeah, but in music, I think it's different. Yeah.
Well, I guess there's so many, like you said, gunshots is probably a really great example because there's so many. There's like Westerns, there's like Star Wars laser beams.
Oh, yeah.
And it really says a lot about the technology and the time period on what you choose there. So I guess having, you know, this information from your director really helps pinpoint and eliminate so many possible decisions right off the bat compared to if you're making a song. You can go anywhere you want with it.
Yeah, it's true. Like Anthony was saying with the not going to, you know, like one of my first Weird Al memories was watching the premiere of I'm Fat on MTV with my family. I recorded it on VHS. I watched it a million times. And if you go back and watch that video, I mean, it is literally sounds lifted straight from Looney Tunes and Three Stooges just throughout the entire thing. And it is true that once we realized that wasn't the case and we shouldn't do that, it did actually narrow down.
It did, yeah.
I mean, it was nice to like just not think about that anymore. We're not doing that.
Totally, it like helped inform the process, and it was just like, great, man, this is the path we're going down. We don't have to, you know, we can lose the Hanna-Barbera soundtrack.
Yeah, it's a relief. I mean, it's really nice to focus when, like I said, when you have so many options.
So were there any like surprising suggestions about the direction you should take with some of the sound?
Trying to think of.
I mean, I'm going to say yes. Let me try to think of an example.
Yeah. Okay.
Ooh.
Well, the seriousness to me is pretty cool. I like that because it kind of keeps it this sort of like dry delivery and the humor. You know, it's not beating you over the head. I do remember in that video, like every time he does a dance move, it's like kind of like a whoopee cushion goes off. And like Fred Flintstone running sound.
Well, one interesting thing about Weird Al and his movies is that his 2 movies, he thinks violence is very funny, but there is no cursing. So there's a fight scene early in the movie that, and it's okay. I guess we're going to talk about spoilers, right?
I guess.
Things?
Spoiler alert, everyone.
I can speak in generalities, but okay, let's say there's a fight scene at the beginning of the movie, and I may have taken the seriousness note a little too far, the earnestness. And there's kind of a beatdown, like a Fight Club style beatdown on the ground. And I kind of went brutal and gory with it. Like it got a little gory. Actually, during playback, the first time the editor, Jamie Kennedy, and the director, Eric Appel, heard it, they actually turned around and looked at me like I was sick in the head or something. Like they were like, it was a mixture of laughing and disgust. Like they were just like, oh my God, we've never heard it this brutal before. And there was a note from Weird Al to actually tone it down and make it, for the first time, a little more cartoony. Yeah. And director Eric Appel's quote was actually, "Can we make it a little more Captain America and less American History X?" And so we thought that was pretty funny. That's I feel like that's really the only time in the movie they told us to take it back a little bit. So that was surprising.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there was anything that was like thrown out that was surprising. We kind of there was challenge is not the right word, where it's like fun, challenging, like surprising challenges in a weird, where it's like, okay, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna make this crowd do X sound like this and whatnot? And so we're fortunate. That's just a good example. You know, just the crowd sounds in this movie are big. There's tons of performances, and we needed to cut in crowd sounds. And you know, we did a layer and everything, and you know, Al is obviously he's a musician. He's been touring his whole life. He knows what those audiences what they sound like when he's performing on stage. And so we got a lot of notes from him going like, oh, they need to sound like this. They need to sound like this. And so we were fortunate he was on tour. The whole time we were working on the movie, Al was on tour. And so there's a scene in the movie where the crowd needs to be chanting. They have to be chanting a specific thing. They're going, no, in unison. And we had some stuff that we had cut, and it just wasn't working for Al. And so it was like, so I not jokingly was like, oh, Al, can you record your audience tonight chanting no? And we can do that. And like everybody laughed. And then Al was like, oh, wait, no, is it a serious request? And I was like, yeah. And so that night, Al recorded his crowd in Nebraska, I believe it was. And they shouted no a bunch of times, and we cut it in the movie, and it sounds big and lush and full, like a giant arena crowd of people chanting no. And so
we also woke up to a local news story where they actually reported on Weird Al recording his crowd and making them movie stars for the night. So we thought that was really, really funny.
Yeah,
I can tell you actually, I can tell you a situation where I actually surprised them, or Eric, the director, when there's an LSD trip sequence in the film. Spoiler alert-ish. I mean, it's been talked about. But there's a moment, and I can, where Dr. Demento is tapping his spoon on a cereal bowl, and I hid. It's a part of the movie that's starting to introduce this whole plot point about the song "Eat It" that Weird Al did, a parody of "Beat It." Well, you know, you'll see the plot point in the movie, but he's tapping his spoon on the bowl, and I hid parts of the song of "Eat It" into those taps. And I just remember Eric, like, he was so surprised. And I don't know, I'd have to ask him like why he was so surprised. I guess because it was so perfect and they had never thought of it. But I guess like was that what happened?
I think it was hey, this is an awesome sound you snuck in, and B, why the hell didn't we think about this? Like it felt like that was the like, oh, you guys got us. You got,
And it's nice. I mean, it is one of those examples of like playing something, or, when you give your art out for critique and you give it to fresh ears and fresh eyes, and somebody just comes up with an idea that just works perfectly and they had never thought of it. I mean, Eric's reaction was just amazing. So anyway, if you watch for those cereal bowl taps in the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a trippy thing too, to take the sound. So to bring it into that kind of segue, that's awesome.
It's we're always, as sound designers, as sound people, as sound artists, always trying to do things to support the story in the film and not just do cool sounding stuff. Like it needs to have a purpose in the narrative. And I think that is if you watch the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Those sounds that I snuck in that moment are a perfect blend of just like, it's really cool. It sounds really cool, and it perfectly supports the narrative that's happening in that scene.
Yeah, that's kind of the magic touch too when you're making music as well. I mean, it's fun to make weird, crazy sounds, but if they're not serving the song, if they're not adding to the emotional impact, then it's kind of like showboating, or it's
exactly.
It's just superfluous and takes away. If it's not serving, it's really subtracting.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Did you find you had to make, were there anything like you worked hard on that you had to kind of let go of? I imagine that's probably a big part of the job.
That is a huge part of the job. It took me a long time to get over that, where you go, all right, this is, as much as this is a collaborative process, at the end of the day, it's the director's movie. I mean, I know I said that cat example. That's a stupid example, or a silly example, but like, we're like, I didn't really fight that hard for a cat sound effect, but I'm trying to think of if there was anything. I mean those fight sounds in the movie.
Yeah. What do you mean the gory fight sounds?
The opening fight scene, or the first fight scene in the movie. Yeah, we definitely.
I will say that I really did like the gory version of the fight scene. Now it's a little more cartoony, but that's cool. Again, it's their movie. I'm trying to think.
It's been so long. Like I said, early on in my career, you just you're like, no, these sounds are this is the movie. And man, that's just, being young and naive and learning to work better with directors. So now there's definitely things I try to fight for, but if I lose them at the end of the day, if it makes the movie, if it's actually helping the movie, then great. Then we did our job, So
I mean, I think the fact that we're having trouble finding an example is like a testament to how bold they were willing to go with all the sound that we did. Because we just kind of, at some point, we just took it and ran with it. I mean, we knew the situations were absurd, and we knew the movie was over the top, and we just ran with that. Mm-hmm. And we would play them stuff that they had never heard before, that was not in their temp edit. And they were just like, yes, yes, yes. We rarely ever got like, no, back to the drawing board. I mean,
there's only one. I'll lead you into it. But yeah, there's one sound that we had a challenge of, where it wasn't so much of like, oh, we got to lose that. It was like, no, we need to find a better version of that. And that led Mike and I down a giant rabbit hole.
It's funny to say that and we knew in the moment, we're like, this is the most challenging sound of the film. Which is funny because there's a moment where Dr. Demento squeezes a bicycle horn very slowly, and it's supposed to make kind of a sad sound. And you'll know if you squeeze a bicycle horn very slowly, it makes no sound at all, except for maybe a little bit of a, but that's just not good enough. So the first thing I put in there, this is a kind of an example of like the cat growl sound. The first thing I tried was a slide whistle. And I just remember like Eric had an audible reaction of like, no, that's a slide whistle. No. And I was like, oh, okay, wow. We're really not going in a cartoony direction, even in a cartoony moment. So I think we went back to the drawing board 3 times. We tried trombones and trumpets and vuvuzelas.
Yeah, it's so funny to think that this one sound was actually the most challenging sound in the movie. Yeah, we tried multiple things. I was pulling stuff down from libraries going like, maybe this will work, maybe this will work. And then
actually they did in the temp have a sound in there for it, but they had mentioned that Weird Al was never quite happy with it. But Jamie Kennedy, the editor, actually recorded a sound of a dog toy. And that gave like this nice elongated kind of squeal, and that kind of went down in pitch in a sad way. But he still wasn't happy with the sound, but it did put me on this direction where I was like, I can make that work. So I actually pulled a bunch of dog toy sounds from a library, and I just made like 5 versions using a dog toy. And we actually went through all of them. I mean, this is the last day of the mix, right?
Yeah.
This was the last day that we had, and we're just like, oh my God, this is the 3rd time we've come back with a sound, and went through 5 versions of these dog toy sounds. And then it was like, oh, play that second one again. Wait, play that third one again. I think I like, and then Weird Al finally, yeah, that one's great. That one's great. And everybody just started applauding. Yeah. And it was the one moment of the movie that I can say that happened. I mean, that was really it, which is funny.
That is funny. You'd think it'd be the gunshots or the punch sounds.
Or a massive action sequence, you know?
Yeah.
We're cutting so much stuff in this whole movie, and the one thing that gave us trouble was a little bicycle horn sound.
Yeah, funny. And I can say that those sounds are very challenging. And the other thing I can say is that that sound that I did is built out of a lot of different layers of like hearing the rubber crumple and the wheezing air coming out and things like that. All of that actually stayed in from my first version. It was just the tonal squeal that came out of it that needed to be interchanged and tested.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And
really getting into the weeds on that one.
Yeah, well, it's fun to hear because you would never guess, right? But that's a really interesting example of the type of thing that I think in films sometimes the actual thing is less real than something you come up with. For instance, I've heard of like people using bacon frying for rain. It just sounds more like rain, but than actual rain does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy how much stuff you kind of sneak in. It's like we were talking about that with like kick drums. I'll put it, but that's kind of a go-to thing. You put a kick drum in sort of a hit or like a door closing, give it some sort of like emphasis, something to help it that you wouldn't think, and there's Foley artists out there. The Foley artist on our movie, Sana Kelly, she did a great job, and that's a lot of their job is doing that, just making sounds out of things that you wouldn't think. I think I don't think this was in weird, but like just an example of like sometimes you got to record like footsteps for movies, and I know that I'm not sure if she does, but I've seen in the past that people will record walking on tape, like old magnetic, like analog tape, because that sounds like walking on grass. It's like there's so many little weird nuances to sounds that
and cornstarch for snow.
Yeah. Just
a lot
sort
of examples of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, stuff like that, where it's not the literal sound that's being used, but some of these other sounds help, sound more real than the real stuff does.
There's some kind of like weird psychology going on there, right?
Oh, definitely, for sure. Something
to recreate that. Any funny examples you can think of that you guys used that would be unusual pairings with the visuals?
Oh man, I'm trying to think of anything in the past.
I should have given you guys homework, right?
Yeah.
I just love it.
Down and typed up.
I'm just into that. I mean, again, like when it's so interesting, the parallels to music, right? Like that sometimes in order to make something have a more impact, or if I want my guitars to sound bigger, a lot of times I have to cut the low end and let the bass come in more. It's very counterintuitive stuff that happens when you're mixing a song. It's finite space. Unlike the real world, things can just keep getting louder and louder, but there's only a certain amount of loudness you can get, and you always have to kind of realize every time you put something in, you actually make everything else smaller.
Yeah, that's the masking frequency issue. I mean, I like step one of designing any kind of sound is making sure you have a low element, a mid element, and a high element, at the very least. One example, I guess, is there's an industrial shredder that is a theme of the movie. It comes up a lot, and it shows up a couple times, and that's I think, I mean, just the very basic ingredients of that sound are like this kind of lava roar that's happening with like rocks crumbling and things like that. That's like the low end element. And then kind of like in the mid range, high end is like running a spoon along a serrated knife. And then there's just these metal screeches that are either from like dry ice or like using a violin bow to bow metal. And those are just like screaming, and they're really, they're in the high end. So, you know, those are really just the basic ingredients of that. I don't know if that's surprising or not. I mean, I guess not. But
Oh no, I think
that was a huge element of those two scenes that involve the industrial shredder.
Yeah.
And again, if you haven't seen the movie yet, you'll know what I mean.
Yeah, you'll see it.
Very obvious.
Yeah, it's like Mike's saying, we have all these different layers and different, frequencies and everything. And, and we did it with the music, we tried to pitch. We were fortunate enough we got the music beforehand, so we could pitch some of the sound effects in, as the same pitch of the music, so you can kind of boost things a little louder and everything, and it not clash as hard. Those frequencies aren't just clashing, and it's definitely a lot of stuff like that to make these sound effects stick out.
I kind of did like an industrial kick drum rhythm to that industrial shredder, and that's actually to the tempo of the music. And then also those metal screeching I was talking about is actually also pitched to the music. So Tony Solis, our mixer, who did a really awesome job, was able to like really bring those sound effects up because nothing was clashing. It was all orchestrated. All my sound effects were orchestrated to the music. And that's doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, if we could get music, but it was so great to have the music before, because sometimes you don't. Sometimes music's getting flown into you on the mix stage.
On the stage.
Like on the last minute, and you're like, oh, we're trying to make everything work. But we were fortunate enough, we got the music a couple of weeks before the final mix. So we were able to kind of make stuff blend in better before we got to the mixed side of things. So
yeah, little small things too, like doorbells. The very beginning of the movie is a hospital scene. You hear a flat line. Kind of tone going throughout the entire thing. That's all pitched to the music. It's works out really well.
That is cool. And that must make it more immersive, and you're kind of like auto-tuning everything to the music.
Yeah.
For sure.
We got plenty of pitching, tons of pitching plugins that we all use. So
yeah, for sure.
Well, it's not unlike, again, like sound designing a kick drum, where you think of those same things. You want like a sub, you want some sort of impact, and you want some kind of body with it.
Yeah.
Just putting them all together. And it makes sense, because there are certain times you're watching a movie or a TV show, and I think maybe they were talking about Stranger Things, like first season, and they have like a cut to like a toaster or something going on. And the toaster's like this enormous cut that it has like all that extra energy to it. But, again, like a regular toaster is just like little tiny.
Yeah. I actually, the toaster in Weird is actually also pitched to the music.
Is it?
And also, made of like 6 or 7 layers. It's funny when you pull sound effects for things like a toaster, and no one recording actually sounds like a toaster. You're actually looking for like the different clicks of it. You're looking for the resonance of the little tiny metal filaments inside the toaster. You're looking for that. You're looking for a clunk. You're looking for a metal impact. Like, it's so funny that even a toaster sound needs to be designed in that way. Yeah. It's also a close-up in the film, and a big part of the moment in that scene. So it needs to be as big as it is a story point in the film.
Yeah, I guess that's a big consideration, where it is in relationship to the viewer.
Oh, definitely.
And by the way, I'm just surprised you brought up a toaster. I didn't realize. I've never talked about the weird toaster.
I could be mistaking it, but I think it was Stranger Things. They were talking about just like a scene change. I mean, it could have been Breaking Bad even. I forget.
Mike and I talk about Breaking Bad. Vince Gilligan, the sound team that they have for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul are amazing. Some of the sounds, I can get just immersed listening to just their sounds when I'm watching that show. So, yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I think that really does pull you in on that show.
Oh, definitely. They do so much cool stuff.
So much of what you're talking about with like being kind of not too tied to your ideas. It's like a maturity thing happens over time where you say, it's not my movie, and it's for the emotional impact and the storytelling. It's again, it reminds me of being like a guitar player in a band, where I want to strum this part because I like playing this loud, distorted guitar, but sometimes it's better when you don't.
Yeah, I want to do my finger tapping solo over this part. No, maybe not.
It's not all about you, man.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. I'm really excited to see it. I didn't know it was free. That was I didn't have the Roku app, but
I'm sorry. I wish I should.
You could be watching it on your phone in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's going to be my evening.
Don't watch it on your phone. Watch it in the biggest speakers you have in your house.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say that. I just, I do not recommend anyone hear our sounds.
That must be a slightly heartbreaking for you, right?
Sometimes. There's if you look it up, there's a really funny David Lynch diatribe about watching movies on phones. I suggest looking it up on YouTube.
I think it's, as sound artist for films and TV shows, I'd say that's my biggest, not disappointment in people, but, people are watching our stuff on iPads or they're just watching it on their tiny little TV speakers. And like, I understand that some people, they might not care or whatnot, but it's just like, oh, you're not getting the full feeling that we're going for on, and listening to it like that. So, Yeah. I was just away for the weekend, and we were renting an Airbnb, and they had a Roku device on the TV. So I was like, well, I'm going to watch Weird. I'm going to watch it on this TV and see how it sounds. And it was just TV speakers. And I was just like, ooh, I can't watch this. I can't listen to this like this because I know what it's supposed to sound like. It shouldn't, so it's like this, it's like that with music. Obviously you're mixing, you want to mix it so it sounds the best as it can be. And then, somebody's listening to it on tiny little headphones. You're like, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, on there. Just listen to it and put it.
Yeah. Here's
speakers.
It's playing off my speaker off my iPhone. Yeah. Okay.
Not even holding it still, so it's all these like weird os effects going on. Yeah, but it does. It makes a huge difference because that's what you want when you watch a movie. You want to forget that you're in this reality and you're just caught up in another world. Yeah. And I think it must be the kind of thing too for you guys where probably a lot of the best work is when it's totally unnoticed.
That's like the curse of our jobs is that like nobody tells you, oh, the great job when it's good. It's only when something's bad for the most part. You go, oh, that sounded bad, and you're like, oh well, we only get, that's what we were dealt with. But that's our jobs. We did a good job when nobody notices, or we did a great job when everybody talks about the sound. So.
Yeah, I mean, it also depends on genre as well. I mean, if it's a science fiction fantasy movie, I think people are keen these days to like noticing, oh wow, that sounds really cool, and things like that. Yeah. And also a lot of sound design, or a horror movie, a lot of the sound design also gets confused for music as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So you guys have some other cool projects I think we should probably mention. For one, the Song Exploder series on Netflix was incredible. I loved that. I mean, I've been a fan of that podcast for a long time when that came out. And also just like the songs that were chosen were great. I mean, especially like 9 Inch Nails and R.E.M.
I'm a massive 9 Inch Nails fan.
Yeah,
and
Mike,
also, go ahead.
Oh, no, yeah, Mike loves 9 Inch Nails. But what was funny is Mike introduced me to the podcast. Like, I feel like it was
a week before?
A week before I got a call going.
The job.
Yeah, I got a call that was like, hey, there's this podcast that's being made into a TV show for Netflix. Are you interested in working on it? And I was like, oh, what's it called? And Song Exploder. And I was like, wait, that's what Mike just got me into this podcast. So then it was like this funny thing where I called Mike and I was like, hey, we're going to be working on the TV version of Song Exploder.
I had been listening to that podcast for years. And we were at Sundance Film Festival, and I just happened to mention it to Anthony for some random reason. I don't even know why. No. And then there we are working on it.
It's good.
Someone
it
should
doesn't even
do a
matter
social media campaign to bring that show back.
Yeah, let's get more episodes of that. It was
Yeah.
so much fun working on that show. Yeah, it was a blast. Getting obviously, the point of the show, you get to listen to those stems, and so then getting to listen to some of these stems, and you're just like, wow, I have, and obviously the artists telling their stories behind everything. It was great, especially that Nine Inch Nails episode. Mike did a ton of cool sound design to blend in with some of that stuff. So or with the music.
I hit a lot of Nine Inch Nails references in the sound effects that I did. So
Yeah.
How so?
good luck finding those. I may have repurposed a few things, here and there, just to stay on theme. Yeah, we'll leave
As
it
a
at that.
fan, it must be pretty cool to know that it's very likely Trent Reznor saw that episode and
I
got to
hope
hear
so.
you.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Trent, did you watch it? Let us know.
Yeah,
We're online.
email me.
Yeah, if you're listening.
If you're listening, give us a call. Love to work with you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that show was a blast. That show, actually, we were working on that right when the pandemic hit. So it was this kind of unfortunate thing where we mixed 2 or 3 episodes on the mix stage and was listening to it loud and everybody was having a great time. And then the pandemic, that March or whatever, when everything was and we're shut down. And so it kind of threw everything for a loop there for a minute with the show. And that's when everybody was getting the the Zoom workflows and the mixing workflow. Remote mixing was starting to become those were the first instances where we were doing remote mixing. Was during Song Exploder. So those are some of the memories I have. Good kind of bad memories, but it was, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's life and work is punctuated in some way
Yeah,
by that
yeah.
transition.
Yeah.
And,
But it was
totally.
it was that Nine Inch Nails episode. I remember we were like, oh, we're getting ready to do the Nine Inch Nails episode, and there's oh, we got to go on break for a month or 2 until we figure out what's happening in the world. But,
Yeah, I think the production on that episode was interrupted by the pandemic.
Yeah, I think they had to do.
Didn't finish it until later.
Yeah, they had to take a pause, but it turned out great, and I wish they would. I hope they end up doing more.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So you guys are almost I'm thinking of you guys more and more almost like a band. You seem to work together on a lot of projects, collaborate a lot. Is that unusual? Is that in this world? Is that something a lot of people do, or is it just you guys have that chemistry going?
I think, Mike and I have known each other. We've been friends since before we actually started working together. I don't know. How long, Mike? How long have we been
13
friends?
years at this point, I think.
13
Over
years.
10
Got it.
years.
Yeah, over 10 years. And, I wouldn't say it's uncommon. There's definitely a lot of people, a lot of supervisors have their editors that they like to work with, and Mike and I just work. Obviously, we're friends, and we work incredibly well together. We have the same, we almost have the same, musical background and comment, things we find funny we like, and so it's just very easy for Mike and I to work together, and it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a goal for a lot of people in the film industry, to kind of just work with the people you know and the people that you work well with. I mean, soundtracks in particular are just so complicated. It's nice when you can find somebody that you gel with and has the same influences and taste. It's also such an abstract thing, sound, that if you find someone that understands it like you do, it's just comfortable.
Yeah, Mike and I can just talk in shorthand or whatever. We can just, it's oh yeah, totally. It's a very easy workflow we have when we work together on projects.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, well, like any other collaboration too, there's times where you have to offer criticisms, and be comfortable with that and not let, egos and emotions get in the way.
Yeah, totally.
So to have that relationship is important, because you want to be able to say that, and you want to also be able to take it. And
yeah, exactly.
You have that history with each other.
And so, if we disagree on something, we'll just go out for drinks afterwards, and then everything's good. So.
Everything's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I guess it is like working in a band. And Mike and I both have played in bands, so I think maybe having that background, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I know what it's like to work in a collaborative way with other people, So.
Well, what's funny is that every every time we work on a project, we're in a different band with a different lead singer.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Maybe different.
And we're just there to serve that vision, of that songwriter,
Right.
AKA director.
Yeah.
You like the Motown group?
What's
Blanking on the name right now.
The Wrecking Crew. We're the Wrecking Crew.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll take that.
For me, I would way rather play with people that are like that I can connect with and gel with and share ideas with and feel comfortable than somebody that might be virtuosic player, but you can't say anything.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
There's no back and forth that way. And that's where a lot of the magic happens. You guys said it earlier. You get an idea that you would have never thought of before based on a suggestion someone else makes.
Definitely. And it's, working with directors and people that are also just as down to collaborate, that helps. Just, I don't think, I know we said this about Weird. It's just everybody was just firing on all cylinders. We were all in sync and in tune with each other. It made, we had a very short amount of time to get this movie edited and mixed. And it helped tremendously that everybody was just on the same page. That was great.
Yeah. There were a lot of chefs in the kitchen, but it really all came together really well.
Yeah, I've been on a handful of other projects where sometimes it's not as easy going, and this one, just for as big as this movie is and for all the different set pieces and for everything that it's parodying, it went incredibly well. So,
and I think part of when Eric was interviewing Anthony to do the job, they actually have a similar comedy background as well.
Yeah.
There was somebody, if you want to talk about Channel 101.
Oh yeah, there's this what do you want to call it? It's a monthly film festival. This thing called Channel 101, created by Dan Harmon and Rob Schraub, and it's just kind of a monthly. Everybody can make a 5-minute pilot of whatever TV show they want to make, and it's 5 minutes you have to do with it. And the audience at the end of the night, I forget. It's been a while since I've been, but I think it was 10 episodes play, and the audience votes on what their top 5 favorites were, and then the next month those top 5 get to come back, and then there's 5 other new shows. And Mike and I met at Channel 101.
That's also how we met. Yeah.
Years
by the
ago.
way, the shows at this festival are absolutely absurd.
Yeah,
comedy wise. So,
very off the wall comedy wise. And Eric, the director, also came up in that world, and so we have mutual friends. And so it was just, when I met Eric, it was just just joking, laughing immediately, making jokes, and there was just this is going to be good. This is going to be this is going to be a fun project. So,
not to mention 10 years ago, you had Anthony had dressed as Weird Al for Halloween, and sent that photo to the producers and Eric. It's no mystery why I think we all got along on this movie. So.
It was a funny thing. Yeah, I had the picture, and I was I sent it to one of the guys, and then it got passed around, and I think they were just oh, we'll give it to this guy. This
is destiny here.
It all lined up. Yeah, it all lined up.
Yeah.
That's really fun. And I think that's important for something like this kind of project, right? You're trying to put that on screen. The fun of making it has to come through, and it'll add to the story and add to the vibe of the film.
Exactly like with music. You know what I mean? You can tell when a band is gelling together, and they're
Yeah. Well, there have been bands I've seen that I wasn't even enjoying the music, but just look at how much fun they're having.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you start this is great. I'm not going to listen to it maybe, but I love watching this. Yeah.
There's been so many times I end up at a festival or I see an opening band or something like that where I have no idea who they are, but you go, oh my goodness, they're putting off good vibes. I like, this is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Hey, it's awesome. I know we're getting near our end of our time. Do you guys like to send people any place on the internet to check out your work? I don't know if I mentioned it yet, but the YouTube channel you guys have, In-Depth Sound Design. Is that both of you guys?
That's all Mike.
Okay.
Yeah,
but, super cool. Just going over, breaking down how the sounds in various films were made. I think it's really
it goes back to talking about my influences like 9 Inch Nails and things like that. Another huge one was just DVD special features from the past 20 years, which have feel like are kind of gone now. And so I created In-Depth Sound Design, pulling these DVD features that broke down the stems and separate sound elements from famous movies like Terminator 2, The Dark Knight, Lord of the Rings, Jurassic Park, these kinds of movies. And you can go to the YouTube channel and check it out. It breaks all the sounds down. I mean, even for people that aren't into sound design, not even in the industry, it's very entertaining. So that's been kind of going for the last 4 years.
Yeah, I think
it's great stuff.
Yeah, Mike and I talk about that. We came up, our film generation we had these DVDs. We grew up, and that's, I always played music growing up. That's how I got into recording, was like playing in bands, playing with my friends, same as you. Like had a 4-track recorder, like, oh, let me learn how to record or whatever. And then on my love of movies, and then you would watch these DVD special features where you would see guys sitting on a mixing console and recording sounds. You go, what? Oh, this is in line with what I do. What is this? And Mike's that In-Depth channel is a great preserving a lot of those cool features, and hopefully making more clips for people to understand the work that goes into a soundtrack for a film and how much fun it can be.
For sure. And like the one that blew my mind, people can go watch it. It's Terminator 2 shotgun breakdown, and it shows all the different sounds that went into creating this shotgun blast. And I remember seeing that when I was younger, and I was just like, wow. I mean, I think from that moment was when I was just like, oh, I can do that for a living, and I will do that for a living.
Yeah. I always joke around. Yeah, mine was one of my Terminator 2, which also there's the dog food of the T-1000, like morphine. There's like what is it?
The T-1000 is walking through the bars. Kind of, it looks like a jail cell, but it's like a security door, and he's like melting through it. It's the sound of dog food slowly coming out of a tin can.
Coming out of a can. So that terrifying image of the T-1000 is just dog food. It's just the sound of dog food coming out. That one, there's a great one on Spider-Man 2. I always talk about it, but there's like a great one about like Dr. Octopus's like tentacles and like how they made those sounds. And it's just like, I remember seeing those early on, or when I was young enough still, and was like, oh, this is cool, this is great. And then taking film classes and going like, oh man, this is something I can do and make money because I can't make money as a touring musician. So
and these movies came out a long time ago. Like I feel like all this information that's in these videos, it's timeless. Like in 50 years people will still be studying that stuff.
I'm a big fan of it. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is take weird sounds, weird recordings I make, and turn them into like sample-based instruments where I can play them on keyboards. Released like a ton of packs for Ableton Live, and I'm just like always fascinated at like what you're gonna get when you you put something in there, some weird pedestrian sound or just anything. It's always a surprise what you get, and this is similar in a way, just because now you have like the visual element, and it just transforms the way you hear it, just as when you start sampling and filtering and applying some like synthesis envelopes and things like that, you get a whole new sound. It's just fascinating how the context changes our minds. The way we perceive things is it's kind of fragile, right? Like,
it's crazy. And just now, all the plugins that we have access to, it's the same in music, where you're just like, oh, I can take, it's like you said, I can take this one little sound and throw it through a million of these different plugins and processors, and it's going to make a totally different sound it's not even going to register as what it was before. And it's exciting. It's very fun. Fun thing to be able to do for a living. So
definitely.
It is. It's well, I mean, imagine that as son not doing that, but all the other stuff, playing.
It kind of sounds like you do a lot of what we do.
Yeah.
Just in a different context.
Yeah, just slight twist on it, I guess, But
yeah, definitely.
It's like being a kid and exploring and discovering things.
I'm totally. Sure. What does this button do? What does this do?
Yeah.
I always joke around that you talk to anybody in the audio post world for film or TV show, and you'll find 9 out of 10 times you'll find a musician. So it's all, we're all from the same world.
Right. Cool. It's a great application of your skill and knowledge. I love it. And yeah, I guess we should encourage people to check out Weird, the Al Yankovic story on Roku for free, by the way, which is excellent. I'm very excited. I wasn't sure I was going to get to see it, so this is great. And also, you guys got some other work worth checking out, of course. The Emmy-nominated Lucy and Desi song Exploder, as we mentioned, and the Selena Gomez thing as well that I don't think we mentioned, but we should.
Oh yeah. That just came out on Friday. We actually had 2 movies we worked on came out on Friday. Weird came out, and then the Selena Gomez, My Mind and Me, just came out on Apple TV. So yeah, that was a fun one to work on as well.
I'm sure, totally different project.
100% different. And just the story that those filmmakers were trying to tell, obviously very much different than the Weird story. So it's a different approach. And you play and you go, okay, these are, we're going to go this way on this film as opposed to this way. And so, yeah.
Very nice. So I thank you guys both very much for taking the time.
Hey, thank you, Brian.
And
thanks so much, Brian. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I really wish you guys the best of luck with everything and in all future projects. And if you guys ever want to come back and talk about another one, I'd be thrilled to have you.
Definitely.
Awesome.
For sure.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.